大家好. Did you notice the difference between Mark Zuckerberg's 大家好 and my 大家好? Mark Zuckerberg is a great entrepreneur living in the US. I am a native Chinese teacher living in mainland China. What's the difference between the Chinese pronunciation of Mark Zuckerberg and me? In this video, I'm going to analyze Mark Zuckerberg's Chinese and two Chinese dialects to answer two questions. Question number 1. Why English speakers don't sound like native Chinese when they are speaking Mandarin? The first thing comes to your mind may be the tones, but I'm going to let you know more than that in this video. Are you curious about that? Keep on watching. Question number 2. How to improve your Chinese pronunciation and speaking? We need to learn something from Mark Zuckerberg, and I'm going to share with you 3 important tips for you to improve your Chinese pronunciation and speaking. Please be sure to watch the video till the end. By the way, if you're new to the channel, please remember to subscribe and hit the bell so that you don't miss out on future videos. Let's get into it. 我很高兴在北京. As a native Chinese teacher, I can tell more than half of his tones are wrong, but that doesn't matter. I can still understand him. I believe most native Chinese speakers can understand him. Why? Because there is something even more important than tones here. That is his rhythm. He did really well in the rhythm. But there's another thing I need to point out. That is his stress. He didn't stress well here. For example, 高兴. As an English speaker, you tend to stress the beginning. It becomes 高兴. But in Chinese, we need to stress the second syllable. It should be 高兴. And Beijing, it should be 北京. Remember, native Chinese tend to stress the last syllable of a word, like 北京. And in this sentence, he made a grammar mistake. That is, when you want to say, I'm glad to be in Beijing, we cannot say, 我很高兴在北京. It should be, 我很高兴来到北京. So when you want to say, I'm happy or I'm glad to be in a certain place, you need to say, 我很高兴来到. For another example, I am happy to be here. 我很高兴来到这里. The literal translation is, I am glad to come to this place. 我爱这个城市. He didn't do well in his tones, but his stress and rhythm here are good. 我爱这个城市.
我的中文很糟糕.
我的中文很糟糕. 我的中文很糟糕. Here, the stress 中文, he made it into 中文. That's the problem. If you are an English speaker, you tend to say it 中文 because you stress the beginning. You should stress the second syllable 文, 中文. If you're not sure how to stress correctly, what you can do is extend the end of a word, like 中文, extend the end.
但是我的天，试试用中文。
但是我天试试用中文。但是我今天试试用中文。He made a grammar mistake here. We need to correct it into 但是我今天试着说中文。So, when you say try something, you can use 试试 plus something. For example, try this pair of shoes. 试试这双鞋. But when you want to say try to do something, it should be 试着 plus do something in Chinese. For example, try to run faster. It is 试着跑快一点。试着跑快一点。
我可能需要练习。
我可能需要练习。我可能需要练习。Did you notice the difference in the stress? We need to stress the second syllable instead of the first one. 可能需要练习. An easier way for you to remember is just extend the end of a word.
Mark, 大家对你能说中文非常吃惊。
Mark, 大家对你能说中文非常吃惊. See, as a native Chinese, his tones, stress, and rhythm are all good, although he didn't speak fast. And in this sentence, there's an important pattern for us to learn. It is A 对 B plus 很 or 非常 plus emotional verb. It means how A feels about B. For example, 老板对他的工作很满意。 The boss is satisfied with his work.
你是为什么要学习中文？
你是为什么要学习中文 Actually, we don't need the 是 here.
很有意思有三个原因。
很有意思，有三个原因。很有意思，有三个原因。He stressed 很 at the very beginning. We shouldn't do that. We need to stress 意 because 思 is neutral. It should be 很有意思。
第一，我太太是中国人。
第一，我太太是中国人。第一，我太太是中国人。We need to stress the second syllable of 第一 instead of 第。
他家说中文。
他家说中文。他家说中文。Here he made a mistake, and it's a common mistake made by almost every Chinese learner. That is family. So for family, when it refers to family members, you need to say 家人. So it should be 他的家人说中文。
和他的奶奶只说中文。
和他的奶奶只说中文。和他的奶奶只说中文。Here he made a mistake. That is 和 because the translation for 和 is and in dictionaries. Most Chinese learners would make this mistake. They use 和 to connect another part of the sentence, but we don't use 和 in this way. 和 is only used for connecting two nouns or pronouns. What we can do for that 和, we just omit it.
我想要跟他们说话。
所以我想要跟他们说话。所以我想要跟他们说话。
今年一天呢？
今年一天，今年一天 and we need to make it into 今年有一天 one day this year. When you want to tell a story with a one day in English, it should be 有一天 in Chinese. He was thinking in Chinese here because he didn't say 一天今年。
我和 Priscilla 决定结婚。
我和 Priscilla 决定结婚。我和 Priscilla 决定结婚。I can tell he was thinking in Chinese because he didn't say Priscilla 和我。In English, we need to say somebody else and I or and me. But in Chinese, we are going to do I and somebody else. That will be 我和 somebody else.
所以我告诉他的奶奶用中文。
所以我告诉他的奶奶用中文。所以我告诉他的奶奶用中文。He was thinking in English because he put in Chinese 用中文 in the end of the sentence. And he made a mistake in the conjunction 所以. We need to use 然后 here. The sentence should be 然后我用中文告诉了他的奶奶. Here it involves in the difference between Chinese word order and English word order. Where should you put the adverbial in the sentence, like in Chinese? It should go before the verb. I made a video before to talk about the Chinese word order versus English word order. I put the link in the description below. You can check it out there. And we need a 了 to go after 告诉 here. How to use 了 in Mandarin Chinese? I put the link in the description below.
他非常吃惊。
他非常吃惊。他非常吃惊。He did well in his tones, stress, and rhythm here.
第二我想要学习中国文化。
第二，我想要学习中国文化。第二，我想要学习中国文化。The problem lies in his stress. 想要 it should be 想要。文化 it should be 文化。
中国是伟大的国家。
中国是伟大的国家。中国是个伟大的国家。Again, the stress. 伟大 it should be 伟大。国家 it should be 国家。Extend the end.
我觉得学习语言帮助我学习文化。
我觉得学习语言帮助我学习文化。我觉得学习语言帮助我学习文化。The stress 文化 we should make it into 文化。And here he made a mistake about help. When you want to say something helps, it should be 我觉得学习语言对学习文化有帮助。We need to use this pattern. Literal translation, it is, I think learning the language is helpful to learning the culture.
所以我学习。 学习语言。
所以我试一试学习语言。所以我试一试学习语言。Here, his stress for language is wrong. It's not 语言. It should be 语言. Extend the end, stress the second syllable of the word. And try to do something. We cannot say 试一试. It should be 所以我试着学习语言。
第三是普通话很难。我只说英文，但是我喜欢挑战。第三是普通话很难。
第三是普通话很难。第三是普通话很难。He stressed Mandarin wrong. He did it with 普通话. It should be 普通话. And for 很难, he did a full third tone for 很. We don't really say that. When we are speaking, the third tone would be semi-third tone. What about those tone change rules? I made a video before. I put the link in the description below. You can check it out there.
我只说英文，但是我喜欢挑战。
我只说英文，但是我喜欢挑战。我以前只说英文，但是我喜欢挑战。His tones were not good, but his stress was not bad. And the rhythm was really good. Okay, for Mark Zuckerberg's Chinese. For his pronunciation, I gave him 3 stars out of 5. We could understand him. For his grammar, I gave him 4 stars, with a few tolerable mistakes. For his content, I gave him 5 stars, because he did really well in the content, especially for what he said. 我的中文很糟糕，但是我试着说中文。That's really important for you guys. Don't wait until the day when you believe you can speak perfect Mandarin. Nobody knows when that day would come. So just start from today. This speech was made by Mark Zuckerberg in 2014. That's almost 7 years ago. And I believe he has made great progress in his Chinese learning. From this speech, I can see the confidence and courage of a great entrepreneur. That's what we can learn from him. For his Chinese pronunciation, for his tones, I gave him 2 stars out of 5. Stress, 3 stars. Rhythm, 5 stars. His rhythm was really good. That's why we could understand him. Let's watch another video clip in 南京话。
她们就是有名的秦淮河女人。
她们就是有名的秦淮河女人。她们就是有名的秦淮河女人。You can see 的 was pronounced as 的 in 南京话 and 河 was pronounced as 河。
关于他们的传说。
关于他们的传说。关于他们的传说。For 关于 the tones were wrong and 的 was 的 here. And 传说 were pronounced as 传说. And that's the problem for 南京话, Nanjing dialect. A few local people could hardly pronounce 吃 and 诗。
跟南京这座城市一样古老。
跟南京这座城市一样古老。跟南京这座城市一样古老。Nanjing was pronounced as 南京, so the tone for 京 was wrong. And 这 was made into 这. That's also the problem with 知吃诗日 in Nanjing dialect. And 城市, they made it into 城市. So for 南京话, Nanjing dialect, tones 4 stars, stress 5 stars, rhythm 5 stars. You could see that there were also some wrong tones in Nanjing Hua, but her stress and rhythm were perfect. Let's move on with another video clip.
这杯酒我喝了。
这杯酒我喝了。这杯酒我喝了。这 was pronounced as 这, so he changed the 之 into z. And 我 he made it into 我, third tone changed into fourth tone. 喝 he made it into 和. L he made it into lo. So you can see the difference in tones, initials, and finals.
先休息，你们慢慢聊。
先休息，你们慢慢聊。我先休息，你们慢慢聊。So 先 he made it into 先，休 he made it into 休 and 你 was made into 你。I guess it should be a branch of 湖南话, Hunan dialect. Tones 3 stars. Stress 5 stars. Rhythm 5 stars. There are more different tones from Mandarin in this dialect, but the stress and rhythm are perfect. That's why it's just a dialect in China. It's not another language. So it's time for me to answer this question. Why English speakers don't sound like native Chinese when they are speaking Mandarin? Before, you may say just about tones. After my analysis, maybe you can tell another two different things. They are stress and rhythm. So, how do you make it better for your Chinese pronunciation? Before, you may just work on tones. Actually, I made a video to talk about how to learn Chinese tones like a native Chinese. I put the link in the description below. The other two factors are stress and rhythm. I'm going to talk more about stress and rhythm. Let's start with stress. So for stress in English, for a simple example, we are going to say hello, so we stress the beginning. Think about Chinglish. Those Chinese, when they are speaking English, they are going to say hello. You can see the difference. English, we stress the first syllable, but for Chinese, we stress the second one. So for English, it will be 你好. Probably most English speakers would do that at the very beginning, but real Chinese should be 你好, 你好. Did you notice the difference? We stress the end, or you just extend the end. 你好. Then it's okay. That's for 2 syllables. Let's see another example for 3 syllables. Chocolate. Because in English, we say chocolate. So the first time you pronounce it in Chinese may be chocolate. So that's the problem. You stress the beginning. But in Chinese, we don't do that. We stress the last syllable. So it should be 巧克力, 巧克力. Did you get it? Do we have any exceptions? Sure. For example, think. In Chinese it is 觉得. Because the is neutral. So we are going to do it naturally. Stress the first one. It becomes 觉得. So when the last syllable goes with a neutral tone, we're going to stress the syllable before it. In that case, it's easy for English speakers to stress well. And then number 3, rhythm. When we talk about rhythm, we need to talk about when to pause. The tricky problem is, when you're reading Chinese characters, you can never see spaces in between. So how do you know when to pause? In this case, you can think in English. For example, 我觉得中文很难. First, think about English. I think Chinese is difficult. So basically, we can do it 我觉得中文很难. That's the slow version. When we read it fast, that will be I think Chinese is difficult. So the pause becomes 我觉得中文很难. See, you can make use of your English or whatever mother tongue you have to know the rhythm in Chinese. Question number 2, how to improve your Chinese pronunciation and speaking. Here are 3 tips for you. Number 1, do more listening practice. Everybody does listening before he's speaking. Think about it. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth. And that may be why we have to listen at least twice as much as what we say. In my next video, I'm going to give you some materials for you to practice your listening and speaking, especially about Chinese tones and stress. Stay tuned. Number 2, work more on stress and rhythm when you speak Chinese. From the 2 video clips I shared about 2 different dialects in China, you can tell some native Chinese also could hardly speak with perfect tones. I recommend you to work more on stress and rhythm. It's easier for you to remember. Basically, you just change the stress from the beginning of a word to the end of the word, with some exceptions for neutral tones. Don't worry about that. And for the rhythm, just think about English or your mother tongue. You can do it well. Don't worry about it. Number 3, start to speak understandable Chinese today. Don't wait until someday you can speak perfect Mandarin. I know lots of your Chinese friends told you that you have to speak with the perfect tones. Otherwise, native Chinese could hardly understand you. However, the video clips I shared have proven that the idea is wrong. Don't worry about tones that much. Work more on your stress and rhythm. Mark Zuckerberg did really well for his Chinese speech, with more than half of his tones wrong. You can also do that. Remember, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. In my next video, I'm going to provide you with some materials for you to practice your tones and stress. Thank you for watching. 再见.